and then we will take it from there.
Cool.
Hello, everybody. Very glad to start the first guest lecture in our final project presentation day. We have a long 3 days with 2 or 3 more exciting presentation, and I hope that everybody will join us. This is not an easy period for all of us. Not for the world, not for Israel, not for the Technion, not for the faculty. We've been doing for the first time in history a virtual semester with many, many challenges. And we're still facing challenges like what we're going to do next semester. We are planning 3 ways of teaching in next semester. And we'll decide only in a month if it will be all virtual, it will be regular, or be something hybrid. So we need to think positive. We need to try to do a lemonade from this lemon named Corona. And part of this lemonade is having a great list of guest lecture that are willing to come and join us, for juries from all around the world. For them, it's rather easy to stay at home and just join us on Zoom, and we are excited that they can do that. So I'm very excited to have architect Knikker, how do I say it correctly? Yeah, with us. I've been hearing his comments in the jury, and I'm very excited to see the work in MVRDV in person. The last time I saw a presentation was about 10 years ago at AAA, and I'm sure something happened from then until today. So I'm excited to hear you. We have a nice number of guests here. We are live on Facebook, and I'm sure many people will join me in congratulating you, saying thank you for coming, and wishing a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll share my screen.
Just 1 second, Jan, before you start. Let's just, so first I would like to thank both David Robbins and Nathan Kiemel for arranging this wonderful opportunity for us, the students, the faculty, and the whole community that surrounds our faculty. But I would like to give you a proper introduction. So to all our guests, MVRDV was founded in 1993 in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and since then has been providing solutions to contemporary architectural and urban issues in all regions of the world. The results are exemplary, outspoken projects that enable cities and landscapes to develop towards a better future. The work of MVRDV is exhibited and published worldwide and has received numerous international awards. 250 architects, designers, urbanists develop projects in a multidisciplinary collaborative design process. Partner Jan Knikker joined MVRDV in 2008. Before that, he started his career as a journalist and then shaped the public image of OMA, Office of Metropolitan Architecture, founded by Rem Koolhaas, for nearly a decade. As partner at MVRDV, leads MVRDV's branding efforts and has overseen the practice's rapid expansion into new markets, focusing on solutions for global issues through its architecture and urbanism. Jan joined us this morning for the students' presentations, and it is with great pleasure that we invite him to take the stage for this lecture. We also invite you to write questions in the Q&A box in possibility, and we look forward to the discussion following your talk. So the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see whether that's going to work. Yes, I guess you can see it now. Great. All right. First of all, let me also say thank you for having me, even though it's only by Zoom. I would love to be in Haifa right now because the weather here in the Netherlands is dreadful, absolutely mad. It keeps raining, so I could use a bit of sunshine. I'm going to take you on a tour of MVRDV's architecture and urbanism and how we try to transform certain disciplines, and it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Don't be shy to ask questions afterwards. To introduce ourselves, we're trying to work all over the world. We're now at project 1040. We only do the we do the conceptualization of architecture, and the execution we always do with partners. That's why we have with these 250 people at the moment 180 running projects. We are, as I said, on 250 at the moment. Average age is 32. We started our career with social housing, which in the Netherlands is a very important thing to do. And in the end, we made it look almost like, yeah, very expensive housing. This is social housing in the Netherlands. And, but sometimes we also work for very rich people. So we like to have a wide scale of projects, public buildings, of course, and a lot of transformations. For example, this is a monument to the Albanian dictator Hoxha, and in the future we're going to preserve the building, but also the use of the building. You see how the people of Albania walk up to it, and also in the future they can do it, but a bit safer. So from a dictator building, this will become a people's building in the best sense, hopefully. We're also doing urbanism quite a lot, actually, small scale, but also up to large scale. And we have an institute at Delft University of Technology called the Y Factory, where we can dream about the future city, sometimes quite dystopian, as you can see here. This is an endless coast with tourism, but we also think about, for example, how can you have a city that is as biodiverse as possible. So here we rebuilt or reconfigured Amsterdam to turn it into a very biodiverse area. We like to publish these things, so you can find these books hopefully in your libraries and read about our radical scenarios for the future. Future is of course something that is very important to architects, because we shape the future, and human behavior is transforming the planet at the moment at an unprecedented speed. We are participating by 1/3 of this at least. Our kids tell us that it's bad. So how do we respond to this, and what do we want to do? For example, urban sprawl. This is a very bad thing, and it causes, of course, a lot of traffic and emissions. And these sprawling suburbs are the pest of the planet, and we should do something about it. Instead, we should perhaps live in Hong Kong density, but it's not very human friendly. So how do we combine these two things? We think we should combine suburban lifestyle with inner city density, and then stack dream houses on top of each other. And I will get back to that later. Sometimes we think that you need to create icons of sustainability. For example, this building, a stack of Dutch landscapes, wanted to say, I am sustainable and I am an example. But in daily life, we're trying to also make these buildings different. Transforming the construction is very interesting, of course, and very relevant at the moment. Every building in the world needs a transformation coming up. When it's not for more density, then it could be for more sustainability. And we're trying to do this as well, sometimes with historical buildings, like here in Rennes in France, which will be turned into mixed use. Sometimes in a port, like this building in the port of Gothenburg, an old warehouse, which we will double up with wooden construction, so that it doesn't tip the balance too much. And then we will have a building that has hardly any air conditioning as well. Even in Sweden, this is possible. We're also doing this on urban planning. So here you see a smart city, which is also mostly a city to learn how to deal with nature. And we have developed our own toolkit where you would implement the 17 sustainable development goals of the United Nations. Very important these days. The skyscraper for us is one of the essential tools of the city. If we actually can turn this into a better building, we will also turn the city into a better building. Also very relevant for Israel. You have lots and lots and lots of skyscrapers. Your skyscrapers are quite boring. And for us, the question was, how can we turn this American and Asian typology of the skyscraper into something more sustainable, but also more social. So in a way, perhaps more European. So here you see the skyscrapers of the Netherlands. They're also really boring. They're also not very high, as you can see. If you compare them to the Asian skyscrapers, they only do they don't even come to the center. So maybe the sky is very low in the Netherlands, a bit like in Israel, perhaps. And if you see these buildings, here we built one in Lego. It's very simple to build it because there is nothing to it in terms of architecture. But if you change only one Lego stone here in the center, then already suddenly you have an address halfway the tower. You have a place where you can go out. You can turn around. You can look at the tower. You can invite your neighbors, maybe for a barbecue. So instead of all standing next to each other looking out, in this tower, suddenly you can have a little bit of a village atmosphere. That's what we dream about. So then we put more parameters of the European town into this skyscraper. And then we end up with a really exciting shape, as you can see here. And this shape already has a lot of the parameters of the Italian mountain village. So here you could actually develop a really social lifestyle. So we wanted to build these towers. We called Lego, and they were very kind. They sent us 1 million Lego stones, and we were able to build 16 of these towers. You can see them now in Centre Pompidou in Paris. And this is the start of our research into the porous city, into a more porous tower. And then we continued, made another 350 towers, discussed them at the university, called Lego again. They were very kind, another 1 million Lego stones for us. And then the students started to build their own creations. And so if anybody needs a European skyscraper, you can call University of Delft. They can send you one of them. And very relevant to us, it became when we were asked to make the most expensive building of the Netherlands in the central business district of Amsterdam. Right before that, this building made in Frankfurt actually was the most expensive there. And the developer went bankrupt. They had to pay so much money for the land and for the construction that in the end, there was no more money left for the architecture, and they went bankrupt. So that was heartening in a way that this kind of bad building didn't sell because people have a choice. So how could we do this better? And also here we wanted to script. So we made a nice design in this vertical village that we like, and then we put it into a computer system. We calculated out 80 different options, and they take into account the outdoor space, the views, the shadow, the sequence of the rooms, acoustics, but also very practical things like the amount of facade panels or window types. And when you see the red ones, they're really bad. The yellow ones are compromises, and the dark green ones, they're really good. So we combined 3 of the dark green towers into this building called the Valley. On the outside of the building, there is a glass facade, which refers to the office facades in the area. And inside the block, it has this, if you want human scale, what we like about the vertical village, outside gardens, outside spaces, and every apartment is different. And because we scripted it, it was also quite affordable. You see here the square meter price. This is not crazy, actually. And there's also a lot of public space. You can walk around the central tower 5 floors up, on the other side 5 floors down. And this is the most important thing. You have this village lifestyle. You see the guy is barbecuing, maybe the neighbors are invited. He knows the neighbors from above, and he also perhaps knows the neighbors from the other tower. So this is not the anonymous lifestyle that we are used to from towers, but this is the village. And it's under construction. Many people told us this would never be done, but thanks to this computer software, it was actually quite feasible in the end. And next year we're going to open this building. And then we're trying to do this also for the middle classes, a little bit less spectacular perhaps, but very, very difficult to do this because it's already more expensive. And we're trying to do this in China with bigger blocks, which is also very difficult because they rather have very simple buildings and maximize the profit. And then for us, there was the question whether we could even do this in a German province town like Kiel. It's in the north of Germany, and they have not a lot of exciting architecture. It's almost, they're very, very simple, in a way, sober people. So no extravagance, I wanted to say. So we know that if we send them anything crazy, they would instantly throw us out. So instead of sending them one radical building, an iconic building, we sent them a scale from a normal German tower to something which is a little bit remarkable, and then towards something iconic, and the people could decide themselves. We did the same with the facade. We made them, designed them a local facade based on companies in the neighborhood. And then they can have a quarter of these facade panels, half of them for 75%. And so to our great surprise, it worked, it was affordable, and we won with the most radical option, which will now be built. So the people didn't decide, they instantly liked the most radical tower, which will have at least some of these vertical village ideas in it. As you can see, it has big outdoor spaces and certain views to each other. But the architect still decides. So what if the architect is not a decision maker and actually you let the people build their own dream houses, because this is the suburban ideal, that you can design your own house. So here we try to turn also this into a vertical idea. We have 17 students in architecture and 17 very difficult clients. You can see the guy from the Big Lebowski is there, who wants to have a bowling alley, but a wisteria, a desperate housewife, and so on. So quite a few people. The only condition was that all the buildings, all the dream houses, they had to be pixelated, so that a computer software then can make compromises between them. In yellow, you see the bowling alley. And so basically virtually all the program is then put together by the software. And the idea is that as little as possible, there is a compromise that compromises the actual idea of the concept of the dream house. And this is then from an ego city, we go to a we go city, so a fully collaborative idea. And we dream about this, and it could be closer than you think, because already you can design your own kitchens at the website of IKEA. So maybe in the future we can design our own apartments and then buy them. We already built one of them at the Dutch Design Week in Eindhoven, and students lived in it for 1 week, and they had a lot of fun and a lot of guests. Now doing the same thing on perhaps with scripting on a bit of a bigger scale, we put the city of Rotterdam into our computers to find more spaces, because the city wants to densify as well. And what we wanted to do is to go from an absolute envelope into a more performative or more intelligent and maximum envelope. And, what you see here, the city center of Rotterdam, and in yellow you see the so-called sunspots, places where you cannot build up because the sun is necessary there. However, the maximum building height is this. So this is the volume, this is the so-called skyscraper zone of Rotterdam. And there is a problem between these two conditions. In yellow is where the sun should be, and this is the maximum built volume. So the city actually made a paradox urban regulation here, how to deal with this. So we scripted this and put the parameters in. And so basically, if we cut the buildings, then we come to a Rotterdam that lives without a shadow. And here we have then an index of the development and densification opportunities of Rotterdam, which are also dynamic, because every time you add a building, the surrounding will change. So now we have this software that actually makes it possible for the city center of Rotterdam to be densified up to a certain maximum according to the regulations. That's not the only thing we want to do. We also want to get rid of the car. You should do that also in Tel Aviv, because the car is way too dominant. I take you to The Hague, my hometown. It had a medieval city center, which was for a large part demolished on behalf of motorways and cars. And also we had a historical canal district like in Amsterdam, but a lot of that was actually demolished and turned into this kind of modernist city, which is practical but not very nice. These neighborhoods are not very valued anymore. So here you see how it used to be, and here you see how it is now today. So a lot of bad things happened, and the people of this neighborhood actually asked us to look whether we can bring back the canals. And so together with them in a bottom-up initiative, we're trying to kick out the car and bring back the water. And basically, by doing so, we want to kickstart the economy of this neighborhood again. And this is how we think it is. So we made a very simple diagram that we could also talk to politicians. So at this moment, it's a neighborhood dominated by cars, and it has no businesses. And in the future, hopefully, there will be water, canals, tourism, restaurants, hotels, and a lot of new businesses, because we all want to be at the water and we don't like to be next to a street. It's very simple, actually. And we experimented with this already in the city of Oslo, when we were asked to make this 360,000 square meter mixed-use master plan, offices, housing, and lots of other things. And the city was very worried that it would attract a lot of traffic, way too many cars, jeopardizing the very qualities of Oslo, that it is a calm city. And so we came to a very simple conclusion after a while, mainly that we shouldn't add any parking spots. So while building this, which was the biggest development in the history of Norway, we created a place for 12,500 jobs, 450 apartments, and all that with only 20 parking spots. It's possible because it's right next to Central Station and nobody should come by car here. And on the other side, you see a list of minuses. So it's minus 6,250 car journeys a day, minus 110,000 kilometers of inner city traffic a day, and so on. So because this was built without parking spots, the entire city benefits and becomes much better. And many cities see these. For example, here you have an old motorway in the city center of Seoul in Korea. We turned this into a linear park, and it's a botanical garden, and you can sit on all the flower pots. You can now walk through the green where there used to be cars, and it's very, very busy. We have more than 1 million visitors every month, and they also represent a certain economic value. So if you walk there with 1 million people, it means that the buildings left and right will be worth more money. So basically, with this investment of 30 million euro into the park, suddenly we see an incredible raise in the real estate value. So architecture actually has a value also for the surrounding, which we all know, but for cities, this is something totally new. For city, it's also new that if you get rid of cars, like for example in Madrid, suddenly you can boost the retail with 10%. And of course, it's also very interesting in times of Corona. If you get rid of the car, the city is not so small anymore, because suddenly the sidewalks get bigger. Actually, the sidewalks are the street, and suddenly you can keep the 1.5 meter distance. It's all very nice if you get rid of the car. I want to take you to Bordeaux, where we are working on a refurbishment project called Bastille de Niel, where we are trying to make the city intimate, and we're doing this all with, if you want, parametric urbanism. And this morning I saw a very nice presentation by Ofra Baruch, and she, I think she would be very interested to see this project, because it's the same kind of thinking that she applied in her study. Bordeaux used to build the city of the future in the 1960s. Then it was not a big success. It's very beautiful, but it's not successful. Then they wanted to do it again, but they said this time, please copy the old town. That was what they wanted from us. We had to go on the other side of the river, or across the street, or across the river from the UNESCO World Heritage. And they have tried before to make something from this neighborhood, but as you can see, they only created a suburb where people sleep and don't live. So this is our site. It's a barracks from Napoleonic times and 2 stations. First thing we did, we went there and we talked to the people. What do you want? And they said, we don't want to see it. Fair enough. Then we had lots of public participation events, 16 in total. And then we started to design. Here you see the site in context of the rest of the city. And we wanted to start with the existing. So we declared the character of the site is very important. So every wall needs to be preserved. Even though you have only ruins there, you preserve everything. nothing can be demolished. So we start basically with the site as it is. Then we have many open spaces which we start to fill in, and suddenly we have a very dense city and a very intimate city. We also create a lot of public space which is shared between cars and pedestrians, a bit like the center of Rome, nothing new. And we also have shared space which is partly private and partly public, which is done like in the center of Amsterdam, also not very new. So it's all quite traditional. Here it comes now. We move up 100 meters with the volumes, and then we start to manipulate this with parameters. So for example, we want to have 2 hours of sun in every ground floor apartment in winter. Bam. Then you cut it in a 45-degree angle, and actually you get this kind of beautiful roofscape. Then we want to go even further with the roofs. We say we want to have solar panels on the roofs wherever possible. So we cut them a little bit further. Then we're nice to the neighbors because they didn't want to see the neighborhood. Bam, and it goes even lower. Then we give it to 126 architects because we don't want this to look like MVRDV built everything. It needs to be more diverse. And this is then how we do it. So here you see one of the buildings when it was still used. This is how the building is looking today. It's basically only walls. They need to be preserved and renovated. And then inside there will be this new parametric volume. And here the same with the old stables. This is how they look now. This is how they will look in the future. So every roofscape has to be totally filled and accepted. Now then we had to present it to UNESCO whether they would be okay with this thing. And they actually loved it. They said, yes, it looks like a medieval city, but modern. And people will wonder what's happening on the other side of the river. And that is very good for Bordeaux. Then we made a public sculpture to show the people that this is actually what we wanted to do. So you could look at it and even walk through it. And now, recently we started to design the, again, a botanical garden. So to make it a very green city, lots of different species you can see here in the, on the public space. And then construction started. So in total, there will be 10 years of construction. We still have, I think, 5 or 6 years to go. And these are some of the projects. Here you see one of the spires. Every building needs to actually fill this volume. You can never cut it away to save money. Here you see a hotel, which is one of the better volumes, perhaps, in terms of commerce. Here you see a school coming up with big, exciting spires. And here you see an expensive housing project. And the nice thing about it, because of the shape of the buildings, the apartments will all be different. You cannot just have 100 identical apartments. It means that you have different apartments and maybe also different lifestyles inside of these apartments. So you will already make this neighborhood much more diverse. Here you see a build up for an old wall that looks like a ruin. Here is a building that is much more rational. They didn't want to fill the shape totally, so they built a winter garden in front, which is fine. And this is going to be a combination of housing and sports, also very beautiful, where you see the outline of the old building on the lower part. Here is an ensemble of buildings that looks like a football has fallen into it. And here is actually how we are building this at the moment. You see the spires that actually appear. The streets are quite intimate. And from the neighborhoods, the buildings, even though they have 10 floors, they appear quite low because they have these roofs with the angles. Also here from the other side of the river, it appears now, and it kind of fits into this urban scape without being too dominant, perhaps. But very important, it's already city. From day one, we had users there, artists and restaurants, and it was very nice. And it became instantly an address in the city. Right. I'm going to move to preservation. I want to show you a project we did in Amsterdam. This used to be a residential street. Then it became a shopping street slowly, and is now the most expensive shopping street in the Netherlands. It's also the only shopping street in the Netherlands where you can buy stuff of Prada and Gucci. The rest of the country doesn't have it, but we have at least one street. The city of Amsterdam had invested a lot in the past into new museums, 4 of them, which are quite close to this street, and Asian tourists, the moment that they're welcome back, they like to go to museums, but they also like to go shopping. So the city council was dreaming of having these glass palaces of big stores, a little bit, flagships like you would have in Tokyo. But the problem is, of course, that we are dealing here with historical buildings, which are old residences. So the buildings are way too small to house these big stores. So when the owner of the 2 white buildings asked the city whether he could demolish these 2 buildings, the city said yes, to his great shock, and he did it instantly. And then he had a problem because he didn't know what to build back. And a few plans he made, he didn't like them, the city didn't like it. And at a certain moment he came to us and he said, I don't know what to build on this site. Everything I do seems to be brutal towards the historical context. And so what we said is, why don't you rebuild it? Because then nobody can be against it and you respect the history. And he said, well, it's too small. And we said, well, stretch it, make it just taller. And then he said, yes, that's a great idea, but it's all in brick and I need big shopping windows. And we said, why don't you build it in glass? So that was our idea, to make it bigger and to build it in glass, to have these crystal houses in Amsterdam, a historical copy, but with a different material. So he liked it a lot. He went to the city said no, because in Amsterdam there is a rule that you have to build with brick. So basically this is what the city wanted. Then we analyzed all the permits that the city had given in the past in terms of percentage of brick. So for example, here you see the percentage is 36%. They said yes to this building. Nice, but 36%, it's not so much. And here it was only 16%. So we made a catalog of all these percentages. We came back to the city and we said, look, you have to allow this because you're already allowing a lot of glass in these buildings. And so this was the compromise. The apartment will be behind brick and the store will be behind glass brick, and exactly as we wanted to do it. Problem now was that we had to build it. We didn't know how to do it. How do you build a historical building in glass? So we went to Venice, to Murano. We found a family company that could make these bricks for us. They did that very perfectly. And then we needed to have a cement. And also here it was quite innovative. We were lucky with Delft University because they basically made us this brick glue. It's based on dental glue. So here you see a Bulgarian dentist who applies it to the bricks. And then she applies UV light. And then it becomes extremely strong. So strong that it can actually carry the entire facade. As you can see here in the test. So this is the stress diagram. It also almost works. We just need a little bit of support, but it can also be built in glass. And so in this way, we could actually realize this building. So we ordered everything in Venice. It was shipped to the Netherlands. We built already some of the elements prefab, glued them, as you can see here, very beautiful. And then we built the rest of the building. Then we closed it off in a dust-free environment so that there would be no dirt in the glass. And then we glued the bricks. At a certain moment, we revealed it. And Chanel was the first tenant. And as you can see, they didn't need that much space. So behind the first floor facade, they built a plasterboard wall. So this happens sometimes in architecture. You're a bit unlucky with these tenants, but as you can see, it's still very pretty. It's not very green glass. Lots of people want to see it. They don't believe what they see. They want to touch it. So it needs to be cleaned a lot, but it's very, very pretty. It's also vandalism proof, so you can replace individual elements very easily. And it fits very nicely into the historical streetscape. So only if you're standing in front of it, right in front of it, you see it as something a bit odd, but the top of the building at least fits in seamlessly. Now recently Hermes moved in and they needed more space. So now we can see the full effect of this wonderful glass brick. Yes. I speed on because I don't have too much time. I want to talk to you about Market Hall, which is perhaps our most famous building. It is in Rotterdam, which used to be a very proud city until Hitler came. He destroyed the city. It was one of his first victims in Western Europe. The old market area was totally destroyed. It was rebuilt after the war quite fast and not very nice because the money actually went into the port, into the reconstruction there. But a few years ago, this big square emerged where there used to be a train, and the city didn't know what to do with it, so they decided to put a market there. And suddenly there was life in this part of town, where beforehand there was very little life. So then they had the idea in 2004 to create a market hall, and they called a few developers whether they could make it and bring a design by an architect. So we were called by our client called Provast, a developer, and we had no idea how to make a market hall for the Netherlands because we don't have market halls in the Netherlands. And so we went to Barcelona to learn from the professionals how to do it. We learned that food can look beautiful, like here, that you can arrange it in a wonderful scenography. We also learned that having a supermarket in the market is a good thing. We learned that if you close the market, you will actually close the neighborhood, so that needs to be open. And also this, we are in the north of Europe, we are kind of proper people. We don't like chaos and we don't like claustrophobic ceilings. So we wanted to have a big market hall. Here's the first design. It was made with the help of a little bit of wine. You have a cathedral for the market, a big space where you can easily enter. And on top of it, you have a Venetian palazzo with apartments, because the apartments had to pay for the building of the market hall. Our developer said, nice, but it's way too expensive. So they were very kind and made us a counter offer. So here you see their counter offer. It's 2 slabs for rental and condos and a tiny little market hall. And we thought we're not going to win the competition with this. So basically what we did, we built a model of this structure because that's what they could afford. And you see here, it's a very simple thing. And if you make a model out of it, the nice thing of a physical model, not a computer model in this case, is that you can play with it. So you can turn it around and suddenly you have the same building that they can afford. You have the walls made out of apartments, a ceiling made out of penthouses, and as a byproduct, you have a big space, 45 meters by 45 meters by 120 meters, a glorious market hall. So we sent this to the developer and they loved it. They calculated whether they could afford it. They had some money left over. They said, can you make it round? Maybe that's nicer. We made it round. Then we had a problem with the elevator. So we made it a little bit longer again towards the top. Then they wanted to add more square meters for the retail. Whoop, and suddenly we have this horseshoe shape, and that worked very well. As you can see here, it's 2 apartment buildings, individual, connected by only 1 bridge. And this is how we delivered Market Hall in 2014. I walk you through to this. So on the ground floor, we have a market, and the first floor, we have restaurants and shops for food. We have 100 units of 20 square meters in the market. They're all different, very nicely refurbished by their owners. You can buy anything in any kind of budget. In the 2 building wings, we have related shops, but also restaurants, 18 restaurants. They are reachable from the outside, so they can stay open longer than the market hall. And then we have this glorious high ceiling, as you can see here. It works very well. You never feel claustrophobic. On the outside, we also wanted to have this wonderful print, but the city thought it was too crazy. So basically, we just used the pavement of the street and we put it all over the building to make it almost fit into Rotterdam. As a result, the color pops out very nicely. So it's like a frame, a neutral frame for the lovely color inside. Inside, the art piece was very important, 11,000 square meters. It's called Cornucopia, and all the things you can buy on the market, they fall down on you. It was printed onto aluminum panels by this artist, Arno Koenen from Rotterdam. And yeah, so this is basically how we built it. And we needed a very big window so that you can still see the art piece, 45 by 45 meters. Of course, that didn't exist. And we had to solve this somehow. But at a certain moment, we had the great idea to just use steel cables. It works a little bit like a tennis racket. It's also quite flexible. So you have steel cables, and on every knot you have a holder that holds the glass, and it's quite flexible. Between the glass is only silicon, as you can see here. So if the building is hit by a heavy storm in the center, this entire glass wall can actually move into the building 1 meter. Then all the steel cables are 8 centimeters longer. Yeah, this very big space, of course, it would cost a lot of money and emissions to heat it. So we don't do it, we don't heat it, we don't cool it. Like in a market hall in Southern Europe, it's going to be hot in summer and it's going to be cold in winter, but that's all kind of nice. Fresh air comes in underneath the glass facade and it leaves all by itself through the roof. It's natural ventilation, not even mechanical. There's absolutely nothing, and it still works very well. And the -1 is the secret of market hall. We have the distribution, because if you live above a market hall, there is a lot of noise. So therefore we put all the noise into the ground floor, into the -1. The delivery is there, but also the food preparation and the storage. So everything that makes noise, everything that stinks is down there. On the other side, we have the supermarket, so that more people would actually come. The supermarket cannot come with small cars, so therefore they got a tunnel for the expedition, and they come in certain times, and then they can use these elevators for the stock. We also have the biggest car park. Sadly, here we were not able to ditch the car, but it's an important car park. It has 1,250 spaces, and because of this, actually, we could ban the car from all the streets around Market Hall. So you will not find street side parking anymore. The car park you can reach with an inverted pyramid of escalators. So already if you're on -4, you can see the daylight streaming into the parking. You can walk up through the history of Rotterdam. There are museums underneath the escalators that show all the material that was found during the construction. And of course, Market Hall has lots of apartments, 228 to be exact. Half of them is affordable housing for rent. The other half is commercial housing, which was for sale, and it wasn't very cheap. Normally we have 3 cores on each side, and each core serves 4 apartments. Every apartment has a view towards the city and a balcony, and half the apartments also have windows towards the market. We had dreamed that you could basically shop with the bucket, open the window, lower the bucket, buy stuff. That wasn't possible. As you can see here, we needed to have triple windows. But the further you go up, the more it inclines. Very nice apartments. And then you have on top, you have penthouse apartments, very light, very big. And here actually we work with patios to add even more light. And the patios, they also have a glass floor so that you can look down into the market hall. Like the baby here, it's not dangerous, you see. And so this is how we made market hall. And then there was a sociological, very interesting thing. Television said that people should come to Rotterdam because we have now like 350,000 tourists, and in the future, because of market hall, we'll be having 400,000, so 50,000 tourists. That's a lot. So we thought maybe we'll invite the Queen to open the building, and she announced that she would come again in the television. Here the Queen came, she had a lot of fun, and she opened the building with a pumpkin. And here you see our clients on either side of the Queen. We were singing for her, which was good fun. But very important, the people of Rotterdam, they had waited for this building for over 10 years, and they wanted to get in. So they came in when the Queen had left. They broke all the escalators, they broke all the doors. There were more than 10,000 people in the building, but the fire department only allowed something like 2,000, so there was a big problem. We also had a lot of press because of the Queen, so that was very good. And then suddenly, in the first year, we had 9 million visitors, of which half of them tourists. And ever since, every year, we have 8 million visitors and half of them are tourists. And this is for Rotterdam, a city that was famous before only for bad things, right-wing fascist politicians we had, drug users, the youngest football hooligans in the world. And suddenly we were a place to visit. We were a place that is hip. We were number 5 on Lonely Planet, and all these international media said, please come to Rotterdam. And then many, many people did. Even Jamie Oliver still has a restaurant there that didn't go bankrupt. And many people take selfies. Let's see. I could stop here, or I have a little bit, I have one more project if you have time, otherwise we'll keep it to this.
Please go on.
Okay, I'll go on. Because we're not ready with Rotterdam. We are also transforming this typology of the art depot. You know, art is usually stored outside the city in a safe, but we're changing this at the moment. In Rotterdam, we have this art history museum, which is a very nice museum. It has very famous paintings, but it has a water problem. It's an old building, and here you see the director of the museum after a summer rain. Whenever in summer it rains, like today, the water pours into this building, and then the art is in danger. So he needed to solve this. But he also had another problem. He had 151,000 art pieces, of which he could only ever show 4%. 96% of this collection is in the depot. Among them, as you can see here, the Rothko, the only Rothko we have in the Netherlands. So that was a real problem, and the museum wanted to do it differently because this is a municipal collection owned by the people. So the director of the museum wanted the people of Rotterdam to be able to see all the art. And for that, he wanted to build an art depot. They gave us a competition and a site. Here is the site. It's in a park by Rem Koolhaas, so a very sensitive location. First, we need to keep a bicycle lane free, and then we need to realize 15,400 square meters of program. No basement allowed because it's so wet. And there was a very, very low budget. So we made first a nice concept. We bring the art into the security. If the country ever floods, the art is at least safe, but that was way too expensive. So then we made a new design, it was too expensive. Another design, it was too expensive. If we would be too expensive during the competition, we would be disqualified. So we couldn't overspend. So instead, at a certain moment, we just sent this box in, and also that was too expensive. So that was a very desperate moment. Then we analyzed what makes it so expensive, and actually the facade was very expensive because of the security. So that was the issue here. We could actually save money, and how can you save money if you need to decrease the surface? You make a cylinder, and suddenly we were within budget, very, very generously actually. So now we could think about this building again from an architectural point of view. So we made it smaller to destroy less of the park and have a bigger roof. Then we have a very big roof terrace so that you can see the city. And the ultimate benefit of this shape is that you can look around it. You can, then we decided to make it look like a sculpture in the garden, reflective, so that you actually see not the building so much, but also the garden and the city. You can also look around the corner towards the top, the volume dissolves, and at night, then you see the interior, because during day, it's an object that reflects. There were lots of trees. The trees went into an asylum, and they have been replanted onto the roof, which is very nice. So we have a lifted park. And here you approach the building in the future, then you go in, you already see that it's not a museum, but an art depot. You can walk through the atrium where you see all the art and 151,000 pieces. You can have a rendezvous with an art piece. So you can find one online and then go and visit it. We have 7 different climate zones. The most protected climate zone is for the paintings. You see it here. So you can go in there with 14 people, 11 minutes, but first you have to dry up. So you need to be very dry. Otherwise the climate is getting bad. But here the guide can actually show you the art piece that you have ordered to see. Then we have some general spaces where you will see how the art is wrapped up and sent to other museums, how they test displays for the exhibitions. And also there will be classes in renovation and restoration, very important. We have a roof terrace with a sculpture garden and a forest and a restaurant. So this is going to be a public space actually on the roof, and it will be open. And this is how we envisioned it. And then we won the competition with this building. And now then we were able to build it. We started to build it here, you see, with reinforced concrete. Then we woke up with panels. And then at a certain moment, the mirror came. And so we slowly started to move it into this effect of a sculpture. We have the forest already on the roof. And it's almost done, but we need half a year now to install the air conditioning so that it works very well. It needs to dry. And then we need another half year to populate it with art. That takes a long time. So actually this building will be open to the public only at the end of 2021. But it's wonderful because in Rotterdam now suddenly you can see the sunset, not in the west, but in the east, if you look at this building, and you can also see the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan. I see that our audience is a bit shy, so still I mean, we have a bit of time. If somebody wants to post a question, we will be happy to ask. But I will maybe kick off with a question to start off the discussion. Whenever I see presentations and lectures of MVRDV, it always takes me back to Charles and Ray Eames and their famous saying, "Take your pleasure seriously." Because there is something so extremely playful about the way that you approach design, but also extremely complex subjects. How do we actually intervene within a city, but also how do we keep the spirit of the city and of the people? And my question to you is about the identity of MVRDV. How do you, in your culture, in the office, maintain such a fresh identity through the evolution of an office? I mean, it's something extremely difficult. I would be very interested to hear a bit about that.
That's a very interesting question. We call it the MVRDV DNA, yep. Which sounds almost a little bit commercial, but we have a combination of people that stay with us for a long time. So there is very little, it's not so dynamic at the top, if you want, in the hierarchy. We're trying to not have a hierarchy, but of course you need a little bit of that. So we have lots of people that are there for at least 15 to 20 years, who in a way keep this spirit, but this could become some kind of a trick perhaps. So therefore, I said in the beginning that we are a very young office. The average age is always around 30 to 33 years. So we work with lots of young people to be connected to academia, to bring the newest ideas in, and in a way to these two things, perhaps they maintain this. We also are a very optimist and a very positive office. So we have these ambitions that we want to be in 4 years' time 100% sustainable. We want to be also the best employer of architecture in the Netherlands. So we have these very sweet, almost Scandinavian goals, perhaps, which are a lot about life quality. So in our office, you will hear a lot of laughter. People actually do have fun. I think especially Winnie Maas is a person who stimulates not in a negative and angry way, but in a very positive way. Also Jakob and Natalie, the other two founders, are generally speaking people that look at the bright side of life. So, and that in combination with wanting to find solutions. So if you call us, it's a risk because you don't know what you get. If you would call Richard Meyer, you would get a kind of Corbusian white building. So you can be very clear that this is what it is. But if you want to have an MVRDV building, we will find parameters, we will combine parameters. So we make our life difficult. We want to have lots of complexity so that we can come to radical solutions. If you have more complex problematics, the solution can be much more radical in a way, because why deviate from the box? So, and I think this, all these things combined perhaps are the DNA of MVRDV. I can't hear you.
Thank you. I see that we have a question from the audience, so I will read it. In the last project you presented, was the choice of reflective material taken into account in the environmental implications? For example, the glare of the sun. In general, have you encountered difficulties between choosing the materials and extracting the concept? Interesting question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. It comes also quite often. But in the first place, as I said, the concept was very important. It needed to look like an art piece in the park. It needed to, there were all kinds of parameters solved by this reflective material. Then the biggest problem we actually had was not so much the sun, because in the Netherlands we have a very low sun, especially in winter, where it's very dangerous to drive into, but so people are quite used to this. So that was not so much the problem, but the biggest problems were actually birds, because we didn't know how many birds would fly to death. There was a bit of protest from the Natural History Museum across the street, but by now we have the panels up for, I think, 4 months, and so far we haven't found any dead birds on the site. So we're quite happy with that. Below the glass or the mirror facade is only the finishing touch, basically, that provides this artistic impression in a way. But behind it, there is a lot of insulation. So it's a very well insulated building, which has the equivalent of a high BREEAM ranking, even though it's filled with air conditioning.
Okay, thank you. A very good question. I would love to know, what are the criteria that you look for in an intern? So you should be expecting some job applications.
Yes, you're all very welcome, but I have to be very honest, we get a lot. And we have a rule that we don't have too many interns, so that we can give them a lot of attention. Interns start always in February and in September. There is a big bunch coming in, and they're a little bit like a club. They become friends often for life. What you can do, make a portfolio that speaks to us. Imagine that the people who have to find interns, that they have to look at many portfolios. So if you find if you make one that actually is quite immediate, that helps. Not too long, not too much text, but something that is easy to digest. You need to have all the right computer programs, which is super important. It's all written on our website. But I think we're looking mostly for design excellence and for clarity. Our projects are quite complex, but we try to explain them in a very clear and simple way, so that everybody understands it, not just architects, but also our aunts, perhaps, and mothers and fathers who are not architects. So that is super important. And I saw this morning 2 presentations by Ofra Baruch and what was his name? Itai Ohat. And they were super clear and very good in that sense. So if you look at their presentations, then that's a very good way to go.
Fantastic. We'll take one last question because we started a bit late, and and maybe this is a very relevant one as well, and I apologize for the questions that I will not ask just because of the time. How did COVID-19 affect the work of MVRDV? Very simply.
We were so scared. Oh my God, we thought we might go bankrupt. And then it took us 3 days to have 250 people work from home. And everybody is kind of happy with this, actually. The team meetings, they're a bit more difficult because they're now on Zoom. But generally speaking, it has created also a lot of happiness that people can actually work in a way they like. The first 3 months, they were heavy for everybody being at home alone. But now people come into the office maybe once a week, twice a week. So it has become much more relaxed. In terms of projects, it's much more dynamic. Many projects suddenly stopped, others started again. So it's all a bit more exciting, basically. And of course, we cannot travel. Normally, I would have perhaps been today in Haifa with you, and we travel a lot. And I think we learned that we can also work from home and that we don't need to travel that much. And this is also very hopeful in terms of life quality and the quality for the environment.
Okay. So with that, we would really like to thank you for joining the jury in the morning and also giving us this marathon of a lecture, I would say, of MVRDV. It was truly a pleasure and we're very honored. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I hope next year I can come in real life, enjoy your son and the wonderful food in Israel, because I love it. So
we will remember that and we will pick you up on that offer.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. And also to everybody that participated. Thank you very much. Questions that were not answered, I will forward to you. And if you want, you're welcome to reply. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely afternoon in the juries.